Live from the Export Beer Garden studios, you're listening to the BYC. And fellas, I've got to come clean right from the top here. I did write out my intro today, and it's currently sitting on my coffee table at home. So I apologise for that. The basic, and it was the best one I've ever written, actually, to be honest with you. The basic gist of it was, hey, New Zealand won the series 1-0. The weather's been shithouse, but I got home last night after being in Hamilton all day, and God, it was bloody nice to watch a bit of Test cricket again, Dylan Cleaver, because I was becoming, and this is a terrible thing because I love the game, it's the greatest game in the world. I was becoming a little indifferent to the slash and dash of your short form games.
Yeah, well, look, if you want slap and dash, you didn't have to look much further than Rawalpindi last night.
Yeah, well,
either.
exactly, which we'll be getting into a little bit later. Incidentally, by the way, we're also going to be interviewing the one and only Tom Latham on this podcast too. Paul Ford, how are you, mate?
I am very well, thank you, Jace.
Good on you, mate.
I'm with you as well, and I love seeing that the Test cricket's back. I would note how much you were saying that you loved the T20 only a couple of weeks back, and we were saying cricket was fickle, and maybe you are also quite fickle, Jason Hoyte.
Yeah, well, no, I think that's a fair point, but I don't know. It's just seeing the lads in white, seeing them leave the ball outside the off stump. But as you pointed out before the podcast, Dylan, there wasn't a lot of that in the Test cricket either. But hey, let's crack into it, boys. The series against India, a solid performance from New Zealand, massively and irritatingly marred by the weather, Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, probably would have won the ODI series 2-0.
Yes,
they're
unquestionably
well in control in Christchurch. But, again, they maybe got saved by the rain, possibly, at Napier in the T20. All in all, it was just a fairly waterlogged series, wasn't it? And it was a shame because, although I agree with you to an extent that the whole bilateral white ball cricket has lost a bit of meaning and it's hard to get overly worked up one way or another about it, when you're playing India, their diaspora is such that you just have amazing crowds. It must have felt like an away crowd for New Zealand at times during that tour. So it's a shame in that regard. But, yeah, look, a pretty meaningless series with a couple of fantastic performances pockmarking it.
Yeah. I mean, what was your impression overall? As I say, Paul Ford, I think, the boys were pretty solid. And as Dylan just pointed out, there were one or two great performances, but nothing massively to get excited about, though it was nice to see Milne and old Ferguson in tandem again.
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, look, I think, as you say, it was a moral victory in the third one day, and that first one day was a really great game of cricket, really enjoyable, and yeah, you'd have to say overall, the rain was first, New Zealand was second, and India was third. I think it was diabolical from a weather point of view. I saw, I think it was CricBuzz described India as pulling off a jailbreak in the third ODI. And as we've talked about before on the podcast, yet another example of cricket not flexing to ensure a game of cricket gets played when we're actually all here because we want to watch and play cricket. It just gets in the way of itself with all of its stupid rules around start times and when a game becomes a game and all that sort of stuff. As I say, that first one day was a superb match. And New Zealand has fashioned a pretty incredible record yet again, having not lost a one-day series at home since January 2019. And we'll be holding on to that record at least until March when we play Sri Lanka. I did see Kane Williamson saying it was good for Adam Milne to get through a series. Just to be clear, he bowled 20 overs, 4 for 124. So, that's terrific. But, I don't think we can call that an incredible marker or a milestone. I thought Washington Sundar looked amazing. I thought Conway looked good. And Finn Allen, Finny the Pooh, Phineas Slog, Obi-Wan Fanobi, strike rate of 100, showed a bit of patience. But, again, only 5 guys batted in the one-dayers.
Just in terms of the quickies, fellas, are we likely to see either of these guys feature in the long form?
It's hard to say now.
Yeah,
I mean, they just don't play Plunket Shield cricket.
Yes.
And that doesn't seem to matter in England now, who are picking guys based on T20 form. But it's still, New Zealand holds to those traditions pretty carefully. And I just can't see Milne or Ferguson getting a run in the New Zealand Test team unless they play a bit of red ball cricket beforehand.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see it. I really would, because we've got a beautiful attack, but sometimes you just want a bit of an edge of the seat factor to that attack as well, and Ferguson would provide that.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, too, Paul Ford, in a way, we do have to acknowledge that it wasn't a full-strength Indian side. There were one or two significant players missing, which I don't know about you. It kind of feeds into this whole sort of thing of how seriously other nations are taking these type of bilateral tournaments, whether or not they're just going, oh, look, that's something we've signed up to, so let's just send a team over and just get it done with.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least this series was a bilateral series with some context. It was for points. But, yeah, you're right. It definitely does take something away that it was so soon after the World Cup, and that, 5 or 6 of the Indian rock stars were not here, either through player rotation or injury, or we're not quite sure what. So, yeah, look, it felt like it was a bit of a second-tier series. Maybe the weather fed into that, but it does feel like cricket is shaking itself down more and more into tiers of cricket, and this was very much not on the first tier.
Yeah. Well, let's look at cricket worldwide, and as I mentioned, I really enjoyed last night flicking between Pakistan, England, and the West Indies, Australia. Let's focus on Australia versus the West Indies first. Smith, Marnus, double tons. I'm throwing up into my mouth a little bit, fellas, but here we go.
They're good players.
Oh, they are good players.
But I can't watch them for extended periods.
No, neither can. No, genuinely, I can't.
It's too painful.
It does my absolute head in, Dylan.
Yeah, same. But the one, look, it was amazing to see Travis Head bat beautifully. Like he just came in and started stroking it to all areas of that amazing but underpopulated Perth arena.
Yes.
It was incredible to see him bowled for 99.
Yeah.
With a declaration just imminent. They didn't even bring the field in for him. He could have put it anywhere, and he chopped, I think it was Craig Braithwaite. It wasn't even a proper bowler. Chopped him onto a stump. So that was one little diamond to take out of the day.
Paul Ford, I was talking just before how wonderful it is to get back to Test cricket. But holy crap, mate, they're still pounding. I mean, Baz Ball's got infectious. The same happening in the England-Pakistan games, just massive run fests.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, that Aussie game far out, 598 runs or whatever it was. And I do love that we just sort of gloss over the fact that Marnus and Steve Smith got those double centuries. I did think, actually, Smith looked really good. I know people have been crapping on about his technique and how he's sort of reworked it, and he looked really annoyingly solid. And Marnus is still annoying, but at least there weren't too many sort of lightsaber leaves and all that kind of stuff. Did seem like the histrionics had been dialed down maybe a little bit. I did enjoy when he got out how pissed off he was as he walked off and sort of forgot to acknowledge the crowd, which just, I guess, played into that. The fact that he's a bit of a dick underneath it all, let's be honest. But there were quite a few of the headlines in that game. We're actually talking about the West Indies fight back and how they were 70-odd for none at the end of the day's play.
Yeah, 74.
They keep talking about sort of Tajenarine Chandapal, who, of course, famously played Larry Gomes in the Netflix movie 83, about India's World Cup triumph. But they keep talking about him as if he's sort of some 17-year-old prodigy, when in actual fact he's 26 years old. He's even scored 50s in first-class cricket with his old man. He looked good. He looked really, really good. And, geez, he got hit in the ball so hard. Far out. That was a hell of a
in the
shot.
tits.
Crushing blow.
They were calling him.
Yeah. So I'm interested by, and I'm going to get the first name wrong. I keep on saying Tangerine, which it's not. But apparently he should have played a lot earlier than he has. And there's some sort of political intrigue in the West Indies. Like there was some talk that Shiv Chandapal wanted to hang around in Test cricket long enough to play in a Test with his son. Now, obviously, he played first-class cricket with his son, but do you kind of know the reason why it's taken him till 26, and he's been prolific? Why he's only made the team now? And let's face it, they had John Campbell, who was pretty shit-house opening the innings.
Yeah, look, I don't really know the backstory on that, Dylan. I'm going to have a rummage into that over the next week and maybe a report back next week. But yeah, I think you're right. Like it just seems like there's been so many poor players that have been picked in that West Indies team that why wouldn't they pick a good one? It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Pakistan versus England, and Baz Ball just continues on its merry way, fellas. Once again, just pounding the Pakistani bowlers. I think the run rate was up to about 7 or 8 at one point. It was ridiculous, Dylan.
Oh, yeah, I've got some incredible stats from that. 64% of the deliveries bowled by Pakistan were attacked.
Yes.
This is Test cricket.
Yeah.
Bear in mind. 4 England batters got centuries.
The 2 openers.
On the opening day.
Yep.
Ben Duckett got his maiden century. Harry Brook got his maiden century. Zach Crawley, of all people, who didn't look like he could bat in the English summer, got a century. And I'm missing someone. Ollie Pope, who's a very fine player, got a century. The only player that missed out of all people was Joe Root.
Yeah, plum LBW.
Ben Stokes looks very dangerous. So 64% of the balls were attacked. England left 13 deliveries in the entirety of the day. Now, I know in Rawalpindi you can't leave on length so much because it's a low pitch.
Yeah, very much so.
And we've also got to acknowledge that this was the same wicket block that produced 1,200 runs when Australia played a test there earlier in the year for the loss of 14 wickets during the entire test. So it's a road, but still that was just spectacular. It was staggering to watch.
Yeah, I mean, fair point that it's a road, but you still have to have the mental capacity to, be positive in that sort of scenario. And it looks like the English Paul Ford have absolutely embraced Baz Ball, even though he hates Baz Ball. I mean, that attacking mentality, and it's serving them well, let's be honest.
Oh, totally. I mean, it's pretty extraordinary when you watch the sort of report at the end of the day and it's Kumar Sangakkara saying, yeah, I think they might just bat for another session and a half and maybe declare on 750. I mean, that's quite something. And let's not forget, imagine if they were actually healthy. They've had 14 blokes out of their squad. Crook. So Ben Duckett was in bed all day on Wednesday, gets out of bed, scores a test ton in his first test match, 107 or adds 230, whatever it was for the first wicket. Absolutely unbelievable. As you say, Pakistan still have to bat on there, and it did look like, if you beat the inner ring, it raced away, crashed into the fence for 4. Pakistan looked like they just couldn't be bothered and were waiting for England to score whatever they wanted to score, a bit like the West Indies, and then they'll come out and have a crack at it themselves. Just for the record, the highest score in Test cricket, which could be under threat if England decided to be particularly savage about things, is 952 for 6. Which was Sri Lanka versus India at Colombo in 1997.
Crikey. Yeah, the English were sort of besieged by illness, weren't they?
Perhaps they didn't want to run between the wickets.
Yeah.
Used up all their runs the day before.
Which is not, exactly. It's not unusual. I remember when I got my 100 for the New Zealand schoolboys over in India, I did that on a broken leg. Which a lot of people didn't. I mean, I didn't mention it, Paul. I didn't tell people that I had a broken leg, but it turns out I had a fracture in three places. In the
only hairline, weren't they?
Oh, no, they were compound. Yeah, I mean, they were bone coming out.
Is that the series where you wore your pads on backwards for the whole series to make a point?
Yeah. She was just a bit too painful to wear them properly. Waiting! Hey, now let's just break it up a little bit, and I believe that we've got a bit of a tune here. Country Roads by the one and only Ian David Stockley Smith.
I hear her voice in the morning, now she calls me. Radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. One more time. Country road, take me home to the place I love, West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, country road.
What a tune, fellas.
It's not the worst.
Not bad.
Yeah, he's not a bad voice.
Maybe a little bit pitchy at times. But
Oh, I've heard you sing, Dylan. I don't think you're in a bloody position to be throwing slings and arrows, mate.
Just a little
you
flat.
sing like you run between the wickets. Dylan.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
all know it.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Hey,
Tone deaf.
well, let's turn to the domestic game. Auckland Aces versus the Otago Volts. Of course, the game starting yesterday. Auckland Aces all up for 187. Otago Volts, Dylan's favourite team, 190 for 4. And, of course, the Volts winning by 6 wickets there.
Yeah, didn't see any of it.
Canterbury versus Northern Districts. Canterbury are pathetic and paltry 176 pull forward. And Northern Districts 122 for 2 after 17.5. And Northern Districts won by 8 wickets, the DLS method.
Yeah, a couple of pretty low, well, actually 6 very low scores, possibly
Yes.
a reflection of some rather green emerald, as we like to call them, some emerald wickets around the country. Yeah, looks pretty difficult. Saw a little bit of standing around following some LBW decisions in a couple of the games, Dylan.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
Something to
still
keep an
going
eye
on, is it?
Bit of umpire, what would you call that? Sort of indifference?
Passive-aggressive standing around. I saw Ollie Newton got 6 wickets for Wellington on what looked a horrendous wicket at Palmerston North.
Yeah, helpful. Certainly helpful to the pace bowlers pitching it up and it jagging miles left and right. So yeah, they'll get into the runs, I'm sure, but not yet.
Yeah, well, as you say, I'm sure the weather's played into that. It's just been an absolute bastard of a spring, let's be honest. And finally, the Wellington Firebirds 170, beating the Central Stags 120.
Yeah, another
God,
duck.
I mean, you're right, those are paltry scores.
Yeah, Will Young got another duck, actually, but I saw the ball that got him out, and there was not a hecky of a
Was
lot.
it Jaffa?
Jagged back.
Yeah.
Look, you always exaggerate these things, but it seemed to jag back 6 to 8 inches. So
Good Lord. Hey, hugely popular part of the podcast, Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
Yeah, well, I accidentally scored a point last week thanks to the MCG Wodonga crew. So it's Cleaver 14, Ford 7 and Hoyte Lane 5.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. 3 bits of news. There'll be something wrong with one of them. Washington Sundar, while answering a question from a broadcaster and former left-arm spinner Murali Kartik this week, lost track of where he was. Having played with the county team in Lancashire earlier this year, Washington is well equipped to tackle the cold in England. But with the temperature really dipping in Christchurch, the all-rounder was left slightly startled and said, yeah, blah, 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 definitely, yeah, playing for Lancashire and Manchester was very cold, similar to, where are we, he said. Before Kartik reminded him, we're in Christchurch. And he said, yeah, Christchurch. And it helped me prepare for the cold conditions today. It's quite frightening, isn't it, to think that the players don't actually know where they're playing. Yeah, anyway, number 2, cricket and rugby stars will be turning back the clock for a festival cricket game between stars from 2 different codes. Palmerston North Boys High School is holding a Slog Sweep, a T20 game at Fitzherbert Park this afternoon between former students of rugby and cricket fame based on the Black Clash, which we all know and love. The withdrawal of Black Caps fast bowler Adam Milne with his New Zealand commitments has been welcome news for the rugby crew, but you've still got Matthew Sinclair, 47. He'll be thundering around out there. There's a guy called Mark Gunning, who's at the older end of the scale, a member of the New Zealand over 60 team. A few other blokes that weren't available: Jacob Oram, George Worker, Bevan Griggs, Bart Campbell, the sports guru, Sevens player Kurt Baker, and rugby protege Ruben Love. But gosh, it's a pretty stunning lineup. You got Ross Taylor captaining Team Slog, and Jamie Howe's in there, I see. Dane Cleaver, pretty useful team. And the number 3 is David Murray has passed away, the West Indian wicketkeeper, son of the legendary Sir Garfield Sobers. He played 19 tests and 10 one-dayers and was hailed by the great fast bowlers of his era, Malcolm Marshall and Michael Holding, as the finest gloveman they'd ever played with. It's a pretty sad story, actually, and Andrew Miller wrote a great tribute about him in Cricket Info that touched on the good and the bad, the misfortune of having a career bookended by legendary Caribbean wicketkeepers Derek Murray and then the flamboyant Geoffrey Dujon. There's a great quote from Dujon who said that he described Murray's silky skills and glove work made him look like Dolly Parton, which I assume is a reference to having tits for hands, which is an interesting self-reflection. But yeah, Murray, he got addicted to the weed. He'd been smoking it since he was 13. He made a bad decision to go on the apartheid tour to South Africa, which he got paid $125,000 for. And he spent, Andrew Miller reports, his final decades in poverty in Barbados, selling drugs to tourists in Bridgetown and trading on his infamy. It's a pretty sad story, but it's a damn good read, I'll tell you that. There we go. That's three things, boys.
Okay, I'm pretty sure it's story 3, and David Murray was definitely the son of a very famous West Indian cricketer, and he definitely didn't share his same surname, but I'm going to say it was Everton de Courtney Weeks and not Gary Sobers was his father.
I was going to say the exact same thing, but not because I had Dylan Cleaver's extraordinary detailed knowledge, but that was the vibe I was getting.
And you saw it written down on his little pad on that table. So 2 points each, boys. Well played.
I should have gone second then, shouldn't I?
No, but Sarah, I was going to say that it wasn't his father.
Yeah.
And number 3, genuinely.
He also he's bloody interesting. He did go on that Rebel tour, and very early in that tour, one of the South Africans snicked off and he took an amazing catch, and Lawrence Rowe, I think, was captaining that team, who was a very classy right-hander. And he sort of came into the huddle and said to David Murray, great catch, come on. Shame they're never going to see that at home anymore. And it was the first time that it had actually kind of registered with David Murray that he had killed his career. By doing
on the tour.
Yeah, and he graduated from weed to crack as well, which is, weed.
A showstopper.
Great evidence that weed is a gateway drug.
Yeah. Hey, right now it's time for Dylan Cleaver's Obscure Players of the 90s.
Obscure Players of the 90s.
I should just also note that I was being sarcastic there. I don't believe at all for a minute that weed is a gateway drug to crack.
No, I mean, we've all had a bit of a toot, haven't we?
On the crack pipe.
No, on the old devil's lettuce. Some of us might continue. I'm not casting aspersions on Paul Ford here, but some of us might still like the odd Bucky Bong.
Hey, my obscure...
Not confirming or denying from here. My flamboyant yellow shirt, red shirt, yeah.
My obscure cricketer of the 90s is someone that I want help from our listeners on, because I knew this guy as a kid, briefly attended the same primary school as him at Nio Primary up in the wilds of Wellington. Glenn Wilkinson was his name, and he was a good kid, actually, and a very talented sportsman, and he was also into pashing girls at a really young age, like standard 3.
Oh,
which is pretty bold.
Yeah, that's starting early.
When you're that age. Very good cricketer. I moved to New Plymouth. Back to New Plymouth. He stayed in Wellington. We played in inter-school college matches, and he was always a great player. Played for New Zealand under 20s or 19s, went on a tour to England with players like Richardson and Perori, Pocock and Cairns. Played one first-class game in the 96-97 season for Wellington. He was an all-rounder. In fact, he was probably more of a seam-up bowler, very good medium pacer in the air and off the seam. But he played one first-class game. He barely bowled, but he scored 96 and 77 not out.
Wow.
Which is pretty handy, right?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
That's an average of 86.5, and he never played again. And I would love to know why. So to our Wellington listeners, and I know we've got heaps, I think we had like 38 at last count. So if one of those...
You're joking.
If one of those knows the reason why Glenn Wilkinson never played another first-class game after that quite incredible debut, which I think was at the end, the last game of one season, but why he never played again, please write in. And how do they write in, Paul?
Flick us an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz or slide into the DMs for the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade on the Gram or Facebook. And Glenn Wilkinson, I think he's still going around. I'm pretty sure he coaches the Raroa intermediate team, which is still up kind of Nio Onslow way. So it may well be that he's tuning in himself, and he'll let us know. That'd be great to find that out.
Yeah. Maybe it's related to his early doors passion. But who knows?
Well, yeah, we're after answers here.
Yes. Waiting! Right now it's time for Paul Ford's Violence Corner.
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
Oh, how good is Chris Gale? West Indies great Chris Gale has been in Australia for a good time, not a long time, as he dominated the first of 2 planned suburban exhibition matches that have been linked with criminal charges of financial deception. Gale was the star of the show at Sunday's T20 blockbuster between Endeavour Hill, which is a bit like a Lashings cricket club, but the Melbourne version, and Queensland Premier Club Western Districts. They played in Dandenong. There were 1,000 spectators. And on Friday, a couple of days before the game, Victoria Police said they'd charged a 35-year-old Doncaster man with 18 alleged theft and deception offences over $250,000 stolen from a Mulgrave company linked to the cricket event. The cricketers are not alleged to be involved in the criminal investigation. I mean, this was an amazing event. There was a DJ, Havana Brown, like a proper DJ. Gale was there like dancing, so he didn't go in the halftime break and have cucumber sandwiches. He went out and like just cut loose with the DJ out in the middle of the field. He batted through the entire innings, got 95 not out, and just got loose. Sensational. I mean, this is club cricket in Australia. Unbelievable.
Great stuff, Paul Ford. Hey, now it's time to get into your correspondence, and this is from JB. And forgive me if I get the pronunciation of this player's name wrong. I'll give it a nudge, fellas. On Monday, Indian batsman Ruturaj Gaikwad, that'll do, eh?
Perfect.
Yeah. Smashed an unprecedented 7 successive sixes in 1 over of a 50 overs domestic match, courtesy of a no ball. Gaikwad is the first player to hit 7 sixes in 1 over in a List A category match. What, fellas, is the best slogging you have seen live? Dylan Cleaver.
So that's a good question, JB.
Yeah.
It's weird though, isn't it? Because cricket's sort of pre-T20 and post-T20.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the slogging seemed to mean a little bit more
Pre-T20, I agree.
Yeah, so I went to I think Dad might have taken me to the Basin when I was a kid to watch New Zealand play an ODI against England, and Glenn Turner and Lance Kens were batting together and both hit balls out of the ground, and I remember being as a kid just blown away by that. In fact, Kens hit one that started bouncing down one of the roads that obviously circle the basin. So
Kent Terrace, maybe?
Yeah, Kent Terrace, I think it was, and that's probably the one that stuck with me the longest, just Lance taking the long handle to I think Ian Gould might have been keeper, maybe it was Eddie Hemmings bowling. Yeah.
Paul Ford?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I watched that Gaikwad over. It was pretty ridiculous that there's a no ball in there that got pumped to 6 as well. And you'd have to say that the bowler didn't offer a lot of variation. He's the annoying bowler. You might remember he had a twirl in his run-up. He tried this thing where he came running in and he did a 360-degree twirl and then bowled the ball. And the umpire was like, "No, you can't be doing that. You're distracting the batsman." So he's quite an annoying bowler. So I think it's quite good that he got pumped. In terms of the ones there's one memory that is indelibly etched into why I fell in love with cricket, which was when my old man took me to Trust Bank Stadium. It must have been in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was Matthew Maynard and Shane Thompson going absolutely batshit crazy, smashing the likes of Dipak Patel and Aaron Brown, the Auckland bowling attack, to all corners. Aaron Barnes, sorry. Yeah. And I'll never forget that day. I remember thinking, far out, I've watched a lot of cricket, watching my mates play. This is like extraordinary. So yeah, there's that. And then it's just those guys. I remember Gilchrist going nuts against New Zealand in Christchurch. I remember Simons at the Cape Tin here. And I remember the likes of, Chris Kens at Lords and Scott Styris at Eden Park. There's sort of a bunch of memories like that. Best slogging I've seen live.
For me, I think it was actually because I was in a corporate box at Eden Park there, so I was on it, man. And so I might have been pretty steamed when I was watching it. But I from recollection, I think it was New Zealand versus the West Indies at Eden Park in the World Cup, and Great Batch went a bit ballistic, and that was some sweet hitting.
And
The way he used to launch that ball into the mid-wicket boundary was a thing of beauty.
And Ambrose steering him out.
Yeah. It was a good match. Hey, JB, thanks for that. And remember, if you want to get in touch with us, Paul Ford gave out the information, and we love hearing from you. Any questions that you want to put to the BYC team, you're most welcome. Now, here's your chance for you and three mates to play in the ACC versus Export BYC Championship at the Hot Springs Spa T20 Black Clash in association with Heartland, with flights, accommodation, tickets and playing kit all sorted. Play an authentic game of BYC out the back of Hagley Oval on the lead up to the Black Clash, 20th of January 2022, in the Garden City, Christchurch, brought to you by BYC Battlers by Export. There are two chances to win. Two lucky teams of four a side will play against each other in the BYC Championship, playing for an awesome prize, an Export prize pack and a meet and greet with the Black Clash teams. Only one team will win. To enter, send us a picture of your ultimate BYC set up via Facebook or Instagram. Now, very excitingly, hang around and I think we're going to go into an interview now with the one and only Tom Latham. Well, this is very exciting news, guys. It's always great to get an actual cricketer on the BYC podcast, and we've got the one and only Tom Latham on the podcast with us today. First and foremost, Tom, thanks for your time, mate. How's life?
Yeah, not too bad so far. It's actually raining in Christchurch, believe it or not. So,
I don't believe it. What the hell?
It's a bit of a shame. It was a beautiful day yesterday, but yeah, it rained today, unfortunately.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, let's kick into it, Tom. First and foremost, a bloody great series for you against the Indian side there. Also, a pretty solid performance from the team overall, taking up the Series 1. Zip probably was going to be 2, but for that inclement weather. The boys must be pretty happy with where they're at after that series.
Yeah, I think they played, we played really well, actually. It was, obviously, that first game was, obviously the chase down 300 was a great effort, but I think, the play we got on Christchurch a couple of nights ago to restrict India to 220 was, a really good effort. A wicket that offered a little bit to the bowlers, and we managed to put the ball in the right areas and obviously bowled them out for 219. And I think the way Finn and Devon went out and played, obviously set the tone at the top of the order and obviously put us in a really good position, but obviously we were 2 overs short, which is a bit of a shame.
Hey, Tom, it's probably been the wettest November I can remember. I know there's nothing you can do about the weather, but what do you guys do when you have a series that just always seems to be off and on? Is it frustrating, or is it just something that you deal with as a professional cricketer?
Yeah, it is obviously pretty frustrating, I think, when you either kind of want it to absolutely bucket down and you go off, or for the sun to come out. But like you said, when you are going on and off, it is pretty frustrating, and it is very stop-starty. But at the end of the day, it's something we can't control, and you just sort of get on with it. Boys have enough to do inside the changing room. There's plenty of shenanigans that go on. So I guess it's best we're probably out there rather than boys getting up to mischief in the changing room.
Can you talk us through some of those shenanigans? I think it's important we get a bit of a taste
Totally,
of that.
man. Totally.
There, poker, football, soccer, anything sort of dicey. Who gets up to the weirdest stuff during the rain delays, Tom?
The bowlers are. Yeah, they're pretty tight groups.
It'd be bloody Salvi, wouldn't it? He'd be leading them up. He'd be leading everyone astray, I'm picking, mate.
Yeah, he is one of them. He obviously gets up to his usual tricks, but there's Finn Allen. He's a young one that likes to get involved in stuff as well. So there's plenty of banter that goes on. Sometimes the older boys and the coaches play a bit of cards.
Oh yeah.
So a few things here and there.
I'd be tempted personally. I'd probably be the one to go out and have a couple of durries in the back there. But it has been really frustrating, Tom, in terms of the weather. But we've talked a lot on the BYC over the last sort of month or so. Where do you think this team's at? And specifically to that question, actually, do you see sort of young talent coming through? To bolster the ranks, as it were.
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously the cricket they played at the T20 side, they played at the World Cup. Obviously they made the semis, but couldn't quite get across the line. And I think from a one-day team, we've obviously had a couple of changes at the top of the order, and obviously with Trent leaving or not being available, there's a role for someone to fill that position. So there are some guys that are waiting in the ranks, and obviously with what's coming up in the next year or so, in terms of a World Cup in India, it's a great chance for us to try, I guess, nail down a team or a squad that we believe we can, win the World Cup over in India. So I think you've seen the likes of Michael Bracewell, Finn Allen, Devon Conway. Obviously, Dev's been around a little bit longer, but these guys are coming in performing straight away, and obviously Matt Henry, who's getting a bit more of an opportunity now. The way he's been playing has been great. So I think there's obviously going to be a lot more white ball cricket leading up to that World Cup, and hopefully we can. I guess we'll nail down things closer to the time, but I think things are looking good for what's to come.
Hey, it was bloody exciting as a fan to see Adam Milne and Lockie Ferguson operating in the same game. Can you just give us a little insight into which one perhaps hits the gloves a bit harder?
Well, I did have some pretty sore hands after those first couple of games, so Lockie was definitely steaming in nicely. I think he was getting up into the 150s, majority of the time in Auckland, which is obviously great to see, and obviously having Milne back, having two guys that can bowl in excess of 145 is pretty important. I guess having an attacking weapon pretty much throughout the innings is. It's been nice, and I don't think we've had that, ever before in New Zealand, where we've had two guys that are able to bowl at that sort of pace. So, it's obviously pretty exciting. They do hit the gloves pretty hard. It's when the ball wobbles to the keeper, it's not a nice thing to do. But I guess that's part and parcel of my job now.
Hey. You've obviously been in prolific form this season, not just the one-day nearly ton and a half against India, but Red Bull cricket as well and Plunket Shield. Just a bit of a two-pronged question here. I know you don't really get an off-season, but is there anything you kind of did over the New Zealand winter in terms of tinkering with technique? And the second part of the question is there any sort of T20 aspirations for you? I mean, I know it's a massive part of the modern game, but, franchise T20 cricket, is that something that interests you either in the present or maybe down the track a little bit?
Yeah, I think the first part of the question, I think as a cricketer, you're always sort of working on different things here and there. I've been working a little bit on my setup probably over the last, probably year or two, to certainly fine-tune things to where I want them to be. You sort of look back on times when you play your best, and I remember a few years ago, or probably 7 years ago, I think, when I felt things were, where I wanted them to be. And I think the more you play, the more sometimes you tend to drift away from things that, little things creep in. So, as I said, it's been probably a year or two where, I've been trying to get things back to where I want them, and, things are slowly starting to come to where I want, which is great. And, I guess the second part of your question is, I think from a franchise point of view, I'd love to experience, different leagues around the world, whether that be IPL or whatever. So I think you've seen in recent months, there's obviously a massive changing landscape in cricket at the moment. And I guess for me, it's all about playing for New Zealand at the moment. And I haven't played a lot of T20 cricket for Canterbury, so I think the more I get the opportunity to play for them, then hopefully the other thing takes care of itself. But whatever it be, for me it's just about trying to put performances on the board, whether that be for Canterbury or whether that be for New Zealand, and sort of let the rest of that, the old selection stuff take care of itself rather than focusing too much on that.
There's a question that we've sort of been pondering on the BYC with regards to New Zealand sides and tournament cricket, your T20 World Cups and so forth. We generally, as a side, perform really well. We've got a remarkable record getting to the semis and the finals, but we seem to have a bit of an issue getting over that final hurdle. Is that something that you guys address as a team? Is there a mental block perhaps to just get over that final hurdle? What's the thinking there?
Oh, we pretty much did a couple of years ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair point.
No, don't go there. We're still in pain, man. It's too soon, Tom.
As you said, I think we're putting ourselves in the situation to, obviously be in semis and finals, which is, I guess, one of the good things you are, and that you are playing in those games. I guess I'm not sure what it is. I think it's something that I guess every team is slightly different when you go to different tournaments, whether it be this year or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, however long it was. So I'm not sure what it is. I think for us it's just about trying to play our brand of cricket, and some days a team beats you on the day, which is fair play to them. But I guess for us, we can play true to our game, in those big games, and hopefully we'll be able to shine in the future. But as I said, it hasn't quite worked out the way we wanted to. But I think if we keep putting ourselves in that situation, then I'm sure there'll be a time where we do come out on top.
Where the dam will break, mate. Hey, now listen, we've got 11 quickfire questions for you, and I understand you haven't been given a heads up about these. So if you don't know the answer, mate, you feel free to pass, and we'll just fire through them. All right?
Sweet, perfect.
All right, the first one is, what's your go-to karaoke song?
Angels, Robbie Williams.
Oh! Good
Classic
stuff. Yeah, good
Classic
on you, mate.
ballad. Hey, who's your favourite umpire or match official?
Goffey from Australia, from England.
Yeah, he's great, isn't he?
Michael Goff. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching him speaking of durries, having a durry in the middle of an innings break there. Hey, what's your best cricketing moment, Tom?
Would have to be the World Test Championship final.
Yeah,
that final day.
Oh.
And I have to ask this, what's your worst cricketing moment?
Worst cricketing moment? Well, I guess you could say that, I don't know, not the 2019 World Cup, but I guess it was a pretty amazing game to be a part of. I'd say, it's obviously a great moment, but also a moment that wasn't ideal as well.
Yeah, painful, man. Hey, who's the most promising player you have played with who never went on to play cricket at a higher level?
Wow.
Is there anyone that might have chosen rugby over cricket or something like that?
I remember Ash Dixon, who obviously played down south. Played for the Highlanders. I think he was a really good cricketer. I didn't quite play with him, but there were a few at Boys High, actually. I think Colin Slade was a really good cricketer as well. I'd probably say those guys by the sound of things.
What was the first proper cricket bat you owned?
I had a Kookaburra Sword, I think it was.
Okay. Did you get any hand-me-downs from the old man?
Well, I actually think I really wanted a Kahuna, but I think he put some sword stickers on it for some reason. So what my brother later told me when we got into an argument when we were a bit younger. But,
as you do.
No hand-me-downs. I actually do. I've got a really cool cricket bat. My first cricket bat that he got me. There's a guy down here in Christchurch. It's called Barry the Batman, who fixes bats, and he chopped one of Dad's bats in half and gave me that. So it's literally about a foot, 2 foot tall, this cricket bat. So it's that was my very first cricket bat anyway.
Great stuff. Where is the best cricket lunch you've ever had, Tom?
Probably not going to be too much of a surprise, but Lords is pretty good.
That seems to be the unanimous answer from most people, fellas.
Yeah.
Lords, they really put on a good spread.
Although I've noticed Bay Oval's starting to come into
Is
consideration.
it?
Yeah. Well, when you walk into Lords and there's a menu that you order off, and there's prawns sitting on the table and dessert to finish. Yeah, you can't go too far past that.
Too good.
Okay, you've got the option of a classic European styled lager or a New Zealand made craft beer. What are you drinking?
I'd probably have to go lager, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, fair enough, mate.
Yeah.
Who is the teammate you would least like to share a lockdown bubble with?
Oh, lockdown bubble. It's a good question, this. I'm going to say Glenn Phillips because he's just got too much energy.
Oh, yeah, he's like an Energizer bunny, that guy, isn't he?
And he'd just want to work out every 5 minutes. So.
Oh, no.
Hey, who's the most famous person you've met outside of cricket?
Probably Prince William and Kate when they were here in Christchurch for, I think it was the 2015 Cricket World Cup. I think it was. Yep. They came here for something and stood in a line and managed to shake their hand. So yeah, that was probably them, I'd say.
Good stuff. And finally,
most importantly,
what is your favourite shadow batting shot?
Probably the pull shot, I reckon.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Well, obviously a lot of people play a drive, don't they? But a pull shot's quite a cool shot to play.
Jason plays the leave.
Yeah.
Leave. Yeah. Well, I was going to say a Ford defence, but it doesn't quite sound right, does it? When you're shadow batting.
There's something very... I was watching the Test cricket last night, and geez, I tell you what, Tom, geez, it's nice to see batsmen leaving the ball outside the off stump again.
We obviously weren't watching the England.
Yeah, I know. They belted the crap out of that, I know.
They get 13 balls all day.
Yeah, Baz Ball.
That's unbelievable.
Hey, well, Tom, listen, mate, thanks so much for your time. Congratulations, man, on your form. It's been absolutely outstanding, and all the best for the fellas over the coming cricket season and summer, man.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you chatting.
Thanks, man. See you later.
No worries. See ya.
Well, there you go, the one and only Tom Latham there. What a great bastard,
nice
fellas.
Guy.
Yeah,
nice guy.
Good player. Hey, listen, we very much appreciate you taking the time to listen to the BYC. Download us and give us a 5-star rating. Tell all your mates about it. And until the next time, from all the team here, we'll see you later.